what happened was in 1933, this country was declared in bankruptcy, and that's when you got all these states being incorporated, and that's when you got babies when they were given Social Security numbers and their birth certificates. You see the names are put in capital letters. That's when we lost our courts. Our courts became maritime courts, and what the Federal Reserve banksters were doing was they were making an estimate of how much tax payments over their lifetime those babies were going to be paying, and they estimated for each person it was going to be like $600,000 or $700,000, and they issued bonds. And if you look at your birth certificate and you turn it over, you'll see that there's a number on there. There's a CUSIP number. That's, they would be issuing bonds for your babies, for the future earnings. And when you go into a court, it's no longer a regular court, and you're not given your rights as a citizen. You're treated as if you were a vessel, as if you were a ship under maritime law. I couldn't believe it when I heard about this. I thought, that's impossible. I read it about 3 or 4 times, and from different people, and finally I realized, this is what's what. And when you pay your tax dollars, you're mailing your checks to a separate place. That's to the Federal Reserve System.
There was a comment that was made on one of your sites about the rule of law. What is actually the rule of law? Because our understanding is those who have the gold make the rules.
I'm sitting here smiling. I've been having a discussion with a group that wants to have citizen juries. And what I was saying to them is that, I'm not going to say that they shouldn't do that, but while they're at it, they should be going to the American Bar Association and asking that group what they're doing when they license lawyers. Because one of the things that happened in my case was the lawyers inside the World Bank took whiteout and falsified the documents and used the falsified documents. And that is a violation of the rules of professional conduct. And, it was open and shut. I could show that they had done this. And I went to the D.C. Bar, the Board on Professional Responsibility, and I asked them to discipline those lawyers, and they didn't do that. So the conclusion that Elaine and I have come to is that the licensing of lawyers should be taken away from lawyers. They're just there, helping conceal the fraud of their brethren. And they've lost the right. They're no longer up to the task. So we've got to. I'm very, very impressed at how seriously you all are, at work, and you know more than most of the lawyers. And so you and other people need to go to the American Bar Association and get those people to understand that we have come to a situation of such massive fraud and corruption that the ABA has lost all total credibility, and they should apologize to the American people for what it is that they've been doing, and they should disband. The lawyers should probably all give back their licenses. I mean, the 13th Amendment should be read from, that's the first thing that the kids in the schools need to hear. It's been a terrible scandal. And in the process of suffering ourselves, you think we've had it bad. You should see what we've done to the rest of the world. It's not a pretty picture. We need to have straightened things out to an extent that people know that we mean business in cleaning up this corruption. I mean, it's just about an impossible mission, but it absolutely has to be done. I don't know how to do it. I'm just asking you if you have any ideas how your contacts are, because we're certainly not going to get any help from the mainstream media. That's a given.
Well, see, that's why we do this show here. This show goes around the world because we have international listeners on this show. But part of what we have found out is that through the research, the Bar Association that we've done here in each state and in the federal level, bar attorneys, technically, under their own regulations, can only operate either for corporations or for administrative personnel. There is nothing in the regulations that allows them to represent John Q. Public, but they're not licensed. All they have is a card from the Supreme Court of each state says, yeah, you're able to practice in the court, but it's not a license because the license is not through the Secretary of State like a doctor's or a nurse or a barber. They don't hold a license through the state. All they have is a bar card, and that's our number one problem. This is part of the problem that we're running into because I've walked into too many courts where we've had honest attorneys that literally tried. Once they knew where we stood at and knew our knowledge, they tried, and the judge reminded them of Rule 11 of disbarment. If they would consider and keep on this line, they would be disbarred. So part of it goes right back into the judges controlling the attorneys in these courtrooms. That's part of our problem.
Yes.
Hey, Rod, this is Harvey. May I ask Karen a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Karen, this is Harvey. I'm one of the worker bees for Rod's whole thing here. Earlier, you had said that there was a website, and there was a little bit of a flurry on the message board about what is the website, and you said you'd give it out if we were interested.
Yes.
In process that you were embarking on?
Okay, let me go over to my computer. I'll take my cat off my lap, and I can give you the URL for that. Yeah.
And you yourself are going through this?
Yes. And it's complicated.
I guess the question comes down to why would it have to be this complicated? Because if the courts know, the judges know, the prosecutor knows, and technically your attorney, the public defender, the one you hire, they know this secret that they're bringing you in as a vessel. Why do we have to jump through these hoops to expose this?
Oh, no. Exposing it, you can do it whichever way you want. But if you want to release yourself from as a ship, so that you're no longer a surety for that bond that's been issued in your name. You're like a one-person corporation. Your future earnings have been pledged. And if you want to end that legal, situation, you have to get a release.
Okay, we have talked about this throughout the years of being on our show, and a lot of it I understand the concept, but it still goes back in. When you walk into that courtroom, that judge knows that you are a living being and that this is done under the state of emergency, under the bankruptcy.
Right, but if you're not able to get the Congress to lift the state of emergency, then you want to be able to go into the court as a real live human being. You want to have been able to have filed those release papers. Anyway, I can give you the website. I've now found it.
Go ahead.
It's called, and it's all run together with no dots, Association for Sovereign Home Rule Within.org. And the guy who's been doing this for me is a fellow named Chris Strunk.
Let me ask you a question. Now, if somebody was to approach you 10 years ago and bring this up to you, what would have been your first impression?
Before I knew about all of this?
Yes.
My first reaction was that it wouldn't be valid because, one of the questions I didn't answer is, what do I consider to be rule of law? Yeah. And when you've got this secret game going on that nobody knows about, that's not rule of law. If people don't know about it, if the judges are crossing their fingers and putting, yellow fringe on a flag and duping people, and people don't know about it, that's not really rule of law. It couldn't be law. But as I spent more and more time seeing how this was done and why it was done, and this whole big what can you call it? It's a scam. It's a world scam. I was in a way, when I found this out, and I couldn't believe it, and it took me a lot of time. And, I ran into people that were telling me the same things. And finally, I said, well, I don't want to believe it. It goes against my grain. I don't want to believe that all of these lawyers and the American Bar Association are pulling a fast one on everybody like this. But I have no choice. That's the way it is. If that's the way it is, I'd rather admit it, that that's the way it is, than sit there and be a dupe. And I think everybody, and that's why it's going to be so difficult, is to get everybody to understand this, is because it's, and I'm a lawyer, so I'm not intimidated by this kind of, gobbledygook in the language. When somebody comes at me with this kind of, it's all, the language. If you read what Chris Strunk has done to release yourself from this, it's just they did it that way on purpose to make it almost impossible to understand and almost impossible to undo. I mean, it's kind of like you're putting landmines in a field so people can't get through. That's what this is. It's that kind of lawyering. And nothing makes me madder than that kind of lawyering. I think we have two questions. The first question is, what do we do until we've got this thing straightened out? And what you're talking about is, yes, that's what we should do. But we've got to get it straightened out. And I think it's definitely doable. When I say straightened out, I'm talking about all of the countries of the world, all 188 members of the Bretton Woods institutions, to say this is a system that benefits those bankers. We know who they are. We know how they've bribed the politicians in our countries. But we are all onto them. And if enough people in the world find out about this, it's not going to continue.
Well, see, that's part of what we've been trying to do is education on the level of getting people educated, going out to these people and bringing it in. But it's like the sheriff sit here and tell me whenever I sit down and talk to them, so we understand what you're saying, but we have an attorney that comes in here and dictates how we're supposed to do it. Regardless of what you're saying is right, that attorney dictates to us. That's where the issue is. If we can get to them to start educating them and getting them to turn around and being, let's get back on the rule of law here. Let's get back of what they raised their right hand to uphold, defend, protect, and get back in what the law actually is. But again, as long as you got the law enforcement and as long as you got the attorneys and the judges on that side of the fence, that's where the problem lies. We got to get to the Bar Association to get them to turn around. That's where the issue really lies.
I've been dealing with those Bar Association people. I've got a meeting tomorrow with the International Law Association in New York, and I'm in Maryland right now. So I've got to try to figure out how to get myself sorted out so I can do that. So I'm not going to be able to continue this call that much longer.
That's good. That's good. Well, I'm glad we had.
But let's. Those people are, they're earning so much money by being crooked and defending those people and feeling good about it. I just despair. I don't see the progress coming from there. I see it coming from the people that won't let them license other lawyers anymore. I see it coming from the people, for them. I don't see it coming from them reforming themselves.